news later.
Good Tuesday afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the noon news. On Victoria Hill, Janelle Slade is on assignment. Protesters gathered outside the historic St. John Paul Church in Washington, D.C. ahead of a visit from President Trump. It's his second trip to a house of worship in 2 days. People are criticizing the president for ordering protesters be cleared out so he could take part in a photo opportunity at a church near the White House. White House sources tell CBS News the president's trip to the church was meant to be a show of strength. Today, he'll sign an executive order addressing international religious freedom. Trump called himself a law and order president who is an ally of all peaceful protesters. Former Vice President Joe Biden denounced the photo op in a campaign speech in Philadelphia this morning.
The moment has come for our nation to deal with systemic racism, to deal with the growing economic inequity that exists in our nation, to deal with the denial of the promise of this nation made to so many. You know, I've said from the outset of this election that we're in the battle for the soul of this nation.
Montana's political leaders are also weighing in on the situation. Congressman Greg Gianforte said the killing of George Floyd, as well as Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia and Breonna Taylor in Louisville, are tragedies, and Americans must acknowledge racism exists in our country. Senator Steve Daines told MTN he strongly condemns racism and Americans must stand together on the issue. Senator John Tester said Floyd's death proves it is high time to address deep inequalities in our country. Governor Steve Bullock also took the opportunity to weigh in on Monday.
I've said time and time again that all of us have to act like our kids are watching, learning from our words and our deeds, and I think that's the case all throughout both of these crises.
Governor Bullock was on a call with the president and the rest of the nation's governors yesterday. President Trump told them to dominate rioters and perhaps use the military to quell violence. Turning now to the campaign trail, it's primary election day in Montana, and for the first time in state history, no one is heading to the polls. The COVID-19 pandemic forced state officials to make the election mail-in only. Voters can still drop off ballots in person today at election offices or register to vote if they haven't already. This election is drawing plenty of interest from voters. Over 300,000 ballots have already been counted, breaking a state record for a primary. Stay with your MTN station tonight for all local and state results. Whitefish residents are still dealing with down power lines and trees after this past weekend storm. MTN's Maren Sue spoke with a Whitefish resident whose home escaped being crushed by 7 trees.
Whitefish residents are still putting their lives together after this past weekend's storm, but one resident tells me he was so surprised at the outpouring of his neighborhood's support.
Get some clothes on, I got something on, I headed downstairs and I heard more crashes. And that was 3 trees toppling over in the yard on top of the previous one, followed by one more tree.
Jim O'Hare has called Happy Valley home for over 30 years. Early Sunday morning, O'Hare says he was woken up by loud cracking and ran outside.
I fought my way through to the door. It was heck getting up the wind. The rain was coming in vertically, just horizontally hitting you in the face in the hail.
He says 7 trees came down around his home, ripping electrical lines down and barely missing his house. Whitefish Fire Chief Joe Page says typically firefighters respond to 3 to 4 calls a shift. He says with the storm, that number went up.
In about 12 hours, the guys ran over 35 calls for wires down, trees down on houses, on cars. Some of the areas in our community got hit pretty hard.
Chief Page says some residents like O'Hare are still without power Monday. O'Hare emotionally says with all the chaos of the storm, he saw the good in his neighborhood.
About 2 hours after this all started, people just showed up out of every place in Happy Valley to help. Do you need something? It was inspiring.
O'Hare tells me he anticipates all of this cleanup will take about a week. In Whitefish, Maren Sue, MTN News.
Wow, just seeing those images, something you see on the news, right?
That's for sure.
Well, parts of the state deal with that kind of weather issue. There's other parts of the state dealing with a different kind of weather-related issue, right?
That's right. Much of northeastern Montana or northwest Montana was dealing with those very strong winds. Meanwhile, we have some localized flooding. This is outside the Billings area, near around the Shepherd area, where some regions that areas that haven't been previously affected by flooding from around the Yellowstone seem to be being affected this year. Now, as we start looking in towards next week, we'll see much much warmer than average temperatures. A lot of the heat we've been experiencing across the Montana, northern Wyoming start to move off towards the east, and we could be in around for cooler weather. And there's a modest chance right now that we could be a little wetter than average heading into next week. We'll take a closer look at the forecast details coming up.
Thank you, Ed. A man who escaped from the Montana State Prison on Saturday is still on the run. Scott Tucker never showed up to a work reentry center in the prison. He was sentenced on burglary and stalking charges here in Yellowstone County in 2018 and was serving 10 years behind bars. Police say they have looked at security video from businesses in Deer Lodge, but they have no concrete idea where he is. Crews have been searching for days, even bringing in a helicopter to assist from the air.
Obviously, an escaped inmate is considered dangerous, and historically, bad things have happened when you get escaped inmates in a population or anywhere for that case.
If anyone sees Tucker, they are asked to assume he's dangerous and do not approach him. Instead, immediately notify law enforcement. Turning to court news, a man who was riding in a car that crashed into and killed a 76-year-old near Manhattan back in October learned his fate yesterday. MTN's Cody Boyer was there.
Gallatin County District Court Judge McEllier sentenced Daniel Cifuentes, the passenger in this case, to 7 years in prison for obstruction of justice, or in other words, lying to police.
He lived on the farm where he was born, and now he was killed right in front of his farm.
Holding onto pages of letters, Bozeman Deputy Police Chief Jim Veldkamp spoke on behalf of 76-year-old Truman Emmelkamp's family. Words written on pieces of paper meant for Daniel Cifuentes.
Being on his farm was his favorite place to be.
It happened on a sunny October day on Stagecoach Trail Road in front of Truman's farm.
Not only was one person callous enough to drive away, make up a story, hide evidence, and lie to cover it up, but so was a second person.
Court documents show the accused driver, Michael Marino, is also accused of rehearsing a story. A carjacker with a gun to Marino's head stole their car. Investigators say that didn't happen. Veldkamp, fighting back his own emotions, continued to read.
This is a family that's working on forgiveness. It's a family that hopes you understand. Pain.
Judge McEllier also fought back emotions, detailing how serious a lie could be, all while Truman's family listened on.
The impact was so violent that it tore off some of Mr. Emmelkamp's clothing.
And then Cifuentes took the stand himself.
I was scared for the kids. I was scared for my life. I was scared I was going to see them again. I felt total complete guilt.
In the end, the judge sentenced Cifuentes to 7 years in prison, 3 years less than the max penalty for that charge. But the words from Vivian Emmelkamp, wife of nearly 54 years, still pointed to forgiveness and redemption.
I know where I'm going to spend eternity. Do you know where you're going to spend eternity?
In Gallatin County, Cody Boyer, MTN News.
Marino is expected back in court this Friday for a change of plea hearing. And before we take a break, there's some interesting new statistics when it comes to the 2019 fire season. While Montana made it out relatively unscathed, it was a different story worldwide. A new study from the University of Maryland and Global Forest Watch found close to 30 million acres of tree cover was lost. That's an increase of almost 3% from the previous year. The cause was widespread fires in Brazil, Bolivia, Indonesia, and Australia. According to the study's authors, many of the areas that burned are particularly important for biodiversity and carbon storage. We have more ahead on the new news, and we have some great news for sports fans in north central Montana. Stay tuned to find out what's coming back. The time is now 12:09, but first, Ed's up next with your statewide weather forecast.
Now, here's your Storm Tracker weather forecast with meteorologist Ed McIntosh.
Welcome back to the new news. We have a little contrast in temperatures, mainly 60s through central and western Montana and 70s across the eastern plains, starting to warm up in northern Wyoming as well, but we've been holding on to a few clouds there here as of midday. But the temperatures will edge up a bit more as we go through the afternoon. Now, the upper level winds, you can see the moisture starting to stream into southern Montana, northern Wyoming, and upper level winds from the north. So this is squashing our ridge down just a little bit. It's going to hold the temperatures back for most locations compared to where we have been for the last few days, but still at or warmer than average for this time of the year. So here's where the moisture stream is coming in today. The last disturbance has already started to move off towards the Dakotas. This continued to bring some showers into the morning. The green and yellow shaded areas show where we have a chance for slightly stronger thunderstorms through the afternoon and evening, and many of the storms through Wyoming would likely be wind producers as close to the surface it's fairly dry after we've had some record-setting hot days in the last couple of afternoons. Now we're watching for temperatures to be mainly in the 70s across Montana, Wyoming with 70s and 80s today. But notice we do start to pick up the chance of those showers and thunderstorms by the time we start getting into the evening hours, with some of those especially favoring the higher elevations into the mountain foothills. Now tomorrow, another disturbance, actually a couple of disturbances pushed through the region, and while the temperatures edge back up to the 70s to low 80s, notice again southern Montana, northern Wyoming favored for some areas where we could see some stronger storms. It looks a little quieter in northern Montana and the western portion of the state for tomorrow, and then some stronger storms could develop once this disturbance moves through as we go from Wednesday night into Thursday. So it's a spring weather pattern. We'll look for temperatures to be 70s, 80s for some of the daytime highs, looking for showers and thunderstorms to continue to pop up here and there. A lot of this wants to favor southern Montana, northern Wyoming for the next several days, but once we get past Thursday, the high-pressure ridge starts to move off into the central plains. We've been talking about this for a couple of days now. We are seeing indications that a deep trough of low pressure starts to move in. And at the top of the newscast, we mentioned that temperatures could start to trend cooler than average starting Sunday into Monday. And it's because of this trough bringing in the cooler air and that chance of rain showers that we're going to start to see that change. So for today, we're going to look at mainly the 70s for the daytime highs across the region, and we'll look for some isolated showers and thunderstorms, again favoring southern Montana for the afternoon. Winds are generally light. It's fairly quiet. Temperatures will be into the 40s and 50s first thing tomorrow morning. And as we've seen here over the last few days, it will trend warmer into the eastern half of the state. Daytime highs for tomorrow, we edge back up. We're seeing more 70s, 80s. And again, there you can check it out where we see some of those showers and thunderstorms coming off the higher elevations of southern Montana by the time we start getting into the afternoon. A few clouds around for tomorrow, but for the most part, it's spring weather. Temperatures will stay in the 70s in western Montana over the next few days. Fairly quiet weather picture for you after we had the strong storms here. Great Falls and Helena looking at 70s to around 80 degrees for the daytime highs. Southwest Montana, a little breezy at times over the course of the next couple of days, but the temperatures are at or warmer than average, a little cool in the mornings perhaps. And then Glendive and Billings looking at temperatures peaking tomorrow. We could see even some warmer temperatures by Friday and Saturday. There's a look at the weather. Back to you.
Thank you, Ed. There's good news for Montana racing fans. The Electric City Speedway in Great Falls has received official approval to begin holding races again. There are some stipulations the track must follow if they want to hold events. The grandstands will be limited to 300 spectators and pit row will be restricted to 52 cars. All ticket sales and race registration will move online to myracepass.com.
Up to 300 fans in the stands. We will work to increase that over time as we prove that we can safely keep people distanced. And in the meantime, if fans aren't able to purchase tickets, we will be offering a pay-per-view option as well. To do it in comfort of your home and still enjoy racing at Electric City Speedway.
The Speedway will host a drivers-only practice on Saturday. Then the first races of the season will kick off on June 13th at 7 p.m. Stay with us. Lane Nordland has your latest ag news after the break.
Now, here's your Farm and Ranch report from the Montana Ag Network.
Welcome back for today's Farm and Ranch news. In our headlines this morning, some news for sugar growers and cooperatives here in the U.S. They're expected to have a stronger financial year ahead with improved production and higher prices for the 2020-21 crop. That's according to a new report by CoBank that said consumer demand for sugar remains high. This comes after last year when weather impacted planting and harvest in Montana and other key producing states, resulting in a shortage of 28.6 million tons of sugar beets. USDA predicts acreage nationwide at 1.13 million acres, up 6,500 from last year. With demand remaining strong and refined sugar supplies tightening, the price of wholesale refined beet sugar has surged to 44 cents per pound, up from 35 cents per pound last fall, and the highest price since 2012. Raw sugar prices, though, have held steady at around 25 to 27 cents per pound over the past 2 years. Now, speaking of sugar beets, Montana's crop progress report shows the entire sugar beet crop has been planted and 71% of the crop has emerged here in the state. Spring wheat planting is wrapping up as well, with an estimated 97% of the crop planted. Winter wheat was reported with 30% of the crop booted, ahead of the previous year pace of 26%. Winter wheat conditions were rated as 80% good to excellent, compared to 87% this time last year. As for winter wheat harvest in the South, Texas is at 32% complete for harvest, while Arkansas is at 14% harvested. We'll be right back. Today, U.S. agricultural exports in fiscal year 2020 are now expected to be valued at $136.5 billion. That's down from the $139 billion in February. COVID-19 being the main driver for those reductions, and bulk commodities including soybeans, cotton, corn, and wheat are making up the biggest portion of that decline. The forecast for wheat exports is down $300 million to $6.1 billion as larger global supplies and uncompetitive U.S. pricing reduce prospective volume. Livestock, poultry, and dairy exports are unchanged from the February projection of $32.4 billion, as stronger demand for pork and dairy products offsets a decline for beef and poultry products. Expanding on the decline of agriculture exports, China is halting imports of some U.S. agricultural products through state-run agriculture companies. The move comes as a response to tensions between the U.S. and China regarding Hong Kong. This action is the latest by China, which puts a trade agreement full of wins for U.S. agriculture in jeopardy. Last week, President Donald Trump threatened to punish China for its relations with Hong Kong. China responded by pausing purchases of U.S. ag products, including recent inquiries to purchase U.S. soybeans. China said the measures announced gravely interfere with China's internal affairs and undermine bilateral relations and will be detrimental to both sides. However, the retaliation is likely temporary, as China will need more soybeans, pork, and beef, among other products. China was increasing purchases of U.S. ag products as the nation reopens following the coronavirus pandemic, but at a slower than expected pace to fulfill the Phase 1 trade agreement. That's all for today.
Thank you, Lane. The Helena Library will set up shop at Marysville Park today. The bookmobile will be there from 2 to 4 this afternoon and will offer a non-contact library experience. Books can be placed on hold online and then will be put in a bag outside the vehicle for pickup. People are asked to wear masks while picking up or dropping off items, and the library cannot let people inside the vehicle due to its small space. Wi-Fi will be available, and people are encouraged to bring a lawn chair to sit behind the mobile library. Very creative way to get in touch with your books again. I know I miss the library, so does my daughter, so it's a creative way to work around it.
That's for sure. It's nice to be able to have that. And as they say at the library, check this out. Temperatures are in the 70s for the highs over most of the region for this afternoon. A few isolated storms across the region. We'll look for highs mainly in the 70s for the next several days. Lows 40s, 50s. Eastern Montana will trend just a little bit warmer. We'll have a few hit and miss showers and thunderstorms. Some areas will see some breezy conditions over the next few days, but for the most part, we're talking drier and warmer weather, and that should carry us into the first part of the weekend. By early next week, if the current trend holds, we're going to be in for some cooler and wetter weather. Certainly cooler. How much wetter we'll continue to watch and update you here as the next couple of days go by.
Thank you so much, Ed. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you back here tomorrow.